All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure that's actually the case. Over on Rumble, of course, I do see that chat is moving. Unaltered DNA says oomph. Slayer the Gamer, Clank. The Operational Failed says hello. Being a layman, good morning, and Clank. And Moskvich2141 says Clank as well. That's an awful lot of fucking clanking over there. Anyway, we've got a lot of news to cover, so we'll jump right into it in a minute here. And let's see. Koala G, you're late, Sticks. A wizard is never late, Koala Baggins. We've got major news breaking here the other day. Had to do a short, actually, to announce the fact that it had come out. Epstein's private calendar reveals prominent names, including CIA chief and Goldman's top lawyer. Keep in mind, here's the shenanigans. This is a tip of the iceberg moment where they're letting the proles, the lemmings, the little people of society know a little bit about who is going to Little St. James. Of course, they make sure to point out in their expose here, this doesn't have anything to do with necessarily visits to Rape Island. Somebody met with Epstein 10, 20 times after he was already convicted in the first place. No, we don't know exactly what was going on. They were probably just in it for the money. There's no other billionaire that they could party with in order to get an investment deal. We all know exactly why they were partying with Epstein. That's probably the same reason why Trump disowned him shortly thereafter and banned him from all of his properties. Hint, hint. I love it when Epstein is brought up and people talk about connections to Obama's CIA director, William Burns, and many, many others. Noam Chomsky, by the way, famous leftoid. It's funny. They always bring up Trump and post badly dated pictures from the early 2000s of him standing with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell before there was any shenanigans that were known publicly at the time. Trump, of course, never visiting Little St. James Island. I keep seeing, by the way, people, and mostly TDS sufferers, so-called conservatives claiming that Trump visited Epstein Island a bunch of times. That's funny. It's not in the flight manifest. I haven't seen any evidence of it whatsoever. You can't fact check it, though, because the claim is so spurious, there's no actual source. Liquid Games, Sticks, what is your favorite ape species? Orangutans. I like orangutans. They're hilarious. And what politician most resembles it? Please keep it YouTube friendly. Honk, honk. I don't think you can compare people to animals, actually, on some platforms. Like calling someone rodent-like or, basically like an insect, like a bug man, I think is bannable, actually, on some platforms. Anyway, orangutans are cool. Salt Nest Monster, welcome to Scotland, President Trump. Clanking from New Hampshire, clanking from Europe, clanking from the other side of the pond, clanking over all of the world. Yeah, so we'll go through a couple of things. William Burns, director of the CIA since 2021, had 3 meetings scheduled with Epstein in 2014 when he was Deputy Secretary of State. My apologies. He wasn't director of the CIA at the time. The documents show they first met in Washington, then Mr. Burns visited Epstein's townhouse in Manhattan. Wonder if he traveled anywhere else. Of course, in some of these cases, we do have to admit that it could have been just favor currying. In other cases, I think people knew, hey, Epstein's into other things other than money laundering and business fraud, and that was never prosecuted, by the way. His bank being looked into for a reason. I think that some of them probably decided to go to his island. Catherine Rummler did. A White House counsel under President Barack Obama had dozens of meetings with Epstein in the years after her White House service and before she became a top lawyer at Goldman Sachs in 2020. He also planned for her to join a 2015 trip to Paris and a 2017 visit to Epstein's private island in the Caribbean. Of course, they point out, well, we're not sure that those trips ever happened. Yeah, no, the person who's meeting with you 20 times skipped the appointment when asked to go to your private island. I don't think that that's likely. Leon Botstein, the president of Bard College, invited Epstein, who brought a group of young female guests to the campus. Noam Chomsky, a professor, author, and political activist, was scheduled to fly with Epstein to have dinner at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse in 2015. Interesting. Yeah. I wonder what was going on at the townhouse, too. Here's the thing. This is the tip of the iceberg. The number of people who visited Rape Island and or Rape Ranch is probably in the thousands. What I've told people before is that you're never going to get full disclosure about that because it would literally collapse the entirety of the Western world. There are so many people with so much collective political and fiscal power, celebrities, politicians, people in the military, athletes, etc. It would collapse everything. Half the businesses would be left without their CEOs if you disclosed all the people that went to Rape Island and were up to no good there. And there are supposedly tapes of the up to no good part. You're never going to see them, partially because they'd be illegal, I'm assuming. Very, very sad. This is probably the only disclosure we'll get until 40, 50 years from now when everyone that ever went to Little St. James has died. So don't hold your breath. Now, it's definitely a revelation. It's just a half-assed one to distract people. It's like giving them tinsel to play with, giving tinsel to a cat. Fetterman's Ghost. You could have a t-shirt made that says Sticks 10.2, like a Bible verse. It'd be interesting. Sparky. Bought your new book, Sticks, at only $6. It should prove to be a great value. It is funny. I had fun writing that one. Opinionated Junkie. Razor. You can't tell jokes unless it's pineapple being on pizza. Lol. Pineapple does go on pizza. No, it can. My favorite pizza is just with mushrooms and extra cheese, of course. Olives are good. Artichoke hearts are actually really good too, but pineapple is delicious as well. One thing I'm not really a fan of is meat on pizza. Pizza doesn't need meat because it's so loaded with cheese. 3 kinds of cheese. I always put an extra mozzarella on mine too. Next news story. We have more recent news. The Epstein article came from yesterday. JP Morgan Chase has acquired First Republic Bank. First Republic has officially collapsed and been taken over and was swiftly sold to JP Morgan, which means now they can offload all the shit that they don't want on the taxpayer dole to the government, and they'll keep the rest. That's what will happen. This is now the second largest bank failure in U.S. history, supplanting the bank failures that happened some time ago, also thanks to Bidenomics. I like how people are already, by the way, as usual, per to form, blaming Trump for this. Well, he deregulated the banks. Donald Trump is to fault for this. That's interesting. Can you please point to the banking regulation that would have saved First Republic? People were withdrawing money there for a reason. It doesn't even have to do with crypto this time, like it did with half a dozen others over the last couple of months. Please show me the regulation that Trump parsed back that directly led to the collapse of a bank under the subsequent administration, the subsequent stewardship. You're not going to find it because that's not what's to blame. It's that these banks are getting hit by interest rates from the Fed, number one. Number two, because of a lack of investing and people wanting to put money in those banks because of Bidenomics. Those are the two things that are responsible. Maxwell JW, it's terrible what's happening in Kenya. Over 100 dead confirmed, and the majority are children. Oh, so they've ticked over 100 now with the starvation cult. Yeah, I talked about that last week. There are a couple of cults over there, apparently. One was a starvation cult, led by a man named Mackenzie, actually. The other one, the pastor was jailed. It might have something to do with selling miracle water, like blessed, like holy water that he prayed over. We're not 100% sure. I mean, the water could have given people cholera or something like that. I don't think there's been an update on that particular case, but Kenya has been having some fucking problems lately with religious nuts. Not a big surprise. When you're in a place where there's no decadence because there's no wealth, people tend to resort to religion. It's a community get-together. It helps with organizational capacity. It's sort of like what Europe did in the medieval era. The church was the center of town. It was the town hall. People got together there. They got a little bit of extra food. Maybe they got together and some charitable work happened, and hopefully the orphans didn't starve. So there was no strong central state that was capable, or in many cases willing, to administer the kind of things that people needed in society to have that sort of community built up. So the church took over. That made sense in the medieval era. In some parts of the world, it's still the 1300s, I guess. Sparky, fun fact, Hawaiian pizza with ham and pineapple, was invented by a Greek immigrant in Canada. Interesting. I will leave out the ham. And the key is this. I have a feeling that a lot of people don't like pineapple on pizza because it gets runny. What you do, don't use pineapple chunks, use pineapple rings, the thin sliced ones, and then slice them again, make them even thinner. Dry them off, pat them off before you put them on the pizza. That way you're not overloading it with too much liquid. Opinionated junkie. Epstein's tapes will be selectively released if current people are out of line and go off the reservation. Yeah, you could see a deliberate leak of the Epstein tapes targeting people of certain persuasions, although it seems like a super majority of the people there were unipartyists, so I don't think that'll happen. It could, but yeah. By the way, Broken Prophet puts green olives on his pizza. No, use black olives. What are you doing with your life? I love green olives, especially with the pimento inside. As a kid, I used to always eat that part first. I would squish the the pimento stem out, and then I would eat that, and then I would eat the olive. But it doesn't go on pizza. Goes into Greek pasta, though. I make excellent Greek pasta. So yes, we have the second largest banking failure in U.S. history. It's trending, but there's not enough news coverage about this. This is significant. We were assured by the Biden administration, the Fed, etc. The situation's calm. Don't worry. Now, the third largest banking failure and the second largest have both happened in a couple of months under the same administration's fiscal policies, but don't worry about it too much. Everything's fine. By the way, what's to protect JP Morgan from suffering from the same sort of contagion after buying this up? Literally nothing. Yeah, that's the problem. Sparky, I like it better when the tavern's the town hall. Yeah, you'd get more meaningful conversation. Ozzy's Robots said for years there's CIA involvement with Epstein Island. I'd assume the same with Soros NGOs. Hard to believe a 93-year-old cares about local DAs. Yeah, they care about the money. Yeah, transitory inflation, says Dust Bunny DX. Exactly. Remember when inflation didn't exist either under the Biden administration. And again, everything's perfectly fine. Strongest economy in U.S. history, record job growth. And yeah, I think that Main Street and Wall Street are not the same thing. That's been pointed out by liberals under every other administration. Sigil Stone 17. Between Epstein himself, Maxwell, bastards like Chomsky, and various bankers and execs, awful lot of connections to the people that destroy your life for pointing out they hold a lot of power. Yeah, good point. Dildozer. I wonder how many parents rented their underage children to Epstein. By the way, he's now a monthly supporter again. I have no clue how that works on Rumble. Hello to the Rumble crowd. Yeah, probably quite a few. Some celeb kids and stuff, going to a pizza party. Yeah, with walnut sauce. Never really heard of that before the ping pong incident that we can't talk about too much on YouTube. Sigil Stone's follow-up. Wasn't checks from JP Morgan bouncing not long ago? I'm sensing the next biggest bank failure with all the toxic assets they just took in. Yeah, well, they'll probably jettison a lot of that. It was very quick how they took over the bank and then immediately had a sale. So the FDIC and other groups that are involved with that, they know what they're doing. So they're going to try to restructure things and hope for the best. Unfortunately, that may not be what happens. Next news story, Iraqi news, which is weird because Sudan is not Iraq. It's not in the same continent. New Sudan clashes despite truce. UN warns country is at breaking point. Yes, in Khartoum, hundreds more people have been killed since our last update. The rebel forces and the de facto kind of government forces, both run by dictators, by the way, so it literally does not matter who wins. They are still fighting. There was a ceasefire, and they extended the formal truce, the formal ceasefire, by another 72 hours in order to allow more people to evacuate. Within about 20 minutes, it was broken. It took less than an hour for the ceasefire to be broken yet again. It looks like the forces are trying to hold back so as not to cause international incidents because they don't want anyone else to be involved because they're both convinced that they're going to win and become big kahuna of all of Sudan. They might, by the way, this is a warning, end up in an escalatory situation with Egypt. They took some of their military hostage, actually, last week. They might end up with a problem with Ethiopia/Kenya, actually, which we just discussed for their cult activity. Or they might invade South Sudan. That's a possibility. The problem is that if a stable government does form, it might try to reclaim its lost land. So then you end up with another genocide. I expect tens of thousands to die. I don't think that it'll be in the hundreds, and that's probably an underestimation already. I expect it will cripple the economy of Sudan, and I expect that regardless of who wins, If anyone, it will lead to a death spiral situation. At some point, the international community, therefore, inevitably gets involved, and the Western world either ends up pumping more and more money into a goddamn grift in Sudan, effectively owning the country in the process, or China could do the same thing. That's possible. Or there's a military intervention. I suspect that will be the actual outcome. Tens of thousands of people have already fled. It's a really sad. Khartoum has been half depopulated by the fighting. Khartoum is the only city in the entire country with a development index, as I pointed out before. So that's pretty damning. There is no economy. There is no government in Sudan right now. The international community was begged for years to help over the Janjaweed rebels that became the RSF, by the way, when they were depopulating hundreds of thousands of people in the Darfur region, for example. The international community set up a couple of peacekeeping missions and refugee camps and otherwise left it alone. Then there was the partitioning of Sudan, which people don't remember. That was some years ago, into Sudan and South Sudan. South Sudan is more stable and Western-backed with less resources. The rest of Sudan is more unstable and continues to have problems. There's a reason why the South decided to leave. I don't expect that it will ever stabilize. It's going to end up like Libya or some other country where there's no strong central leadership that isn't a dictator, and dictators tend to run afoul of one or more of the great powers of the world and get deposed, and then the cycle starts all over again. So unfortunately, for the Sudanese, I think they are officially screwed. I'm just waiting for the Clinton Foundation to show up and say, we're going to build some houses and then places for medicine and shit. Casey Bengry, I am willing to bet Bill Clinton and Epstein Island have some dark secrets. Oh, we know that. That's we have a gnosis of that. It's just that it's not public. F. Giamato, starting garden. What plants to help keep bugs away synergistically with eatable crops? Thanks, Sticks. Basil is a good one. I like purple basil myself, and then you can always dry that and eat that too. Chamomile. Chamomile forms a symbiosis with virtually every other life form around it and literally interferes with nobody. So chamomile is a good one. There are many others. Look up companion planting, and you can get a better idea. But basil and chamomile are two of the all-times. And remember, carrots love tomatoes. There was actually a book by that title years ago. Vu Viet Hung. Hey, Sticks, have you ever thought of buying stocks? You can earn dividends, which is pretty nice, I think. I guess, if I had the expendable capital, I'd be more into a mutual fund or something like that. I've thought about opening a couple of those. My grandfather had some. They did well. Something like that. I don't like maybe the risk of holding stock quite as much. And, of course, I'm invested in silver and in lead. King of Biltong, good morning from Antons in Roanoke, Texas. Hashtag Clank Nation. You are late, Anton. Where's my fucking Biltong? I am going to swing by and buy a bunch of that sometime. I do kind of miss Texas sometime because of the weather mainly. Texas is flat as a washboard and 100 degrees at all times. Pretty fun state. Lots of guns, enormous amount of booze and shit. And by the way, the tacos that I cook are authentic. Yes, I learned from actual Mexicans. And I'm going to be making tacos soon too now that the weather is warmer. It reminds me of this shit. Dilligaff, good morning from South Texas, Sticks. Clank on, brother. And Miss Grimstock, good morning, Sticks. Hope you have a great week. Shout out to my husband who's on his way to work and listens to you every morning. So he's listening right now. Hello, Miss Grimstock's husband. Jorge Gomes says Texas can't make biltong. Probably can, actually. I've thought about getting into making cheese at some point. I can make paneer, and from there it's a small step to cottage cheese. I'm thinking the process is not actually that difficult. I don't know exactly how you'd get a proper mold colony going, but I could probably figure it out. I also want to grow mushrooms sometime. Sparky, I've had good luck with garlic keeping, yes, garlic, excellent point. Keeping evil devil's horse lubber grasshoppers away from the garden. Yes, garlic is another good one. Put a bunch of that around. Also, if you use real copper pennies, older pennies and shit like that in the garden, it'll keep slugs away. You deserve real money. Is the money printer going to brrr faces off now? Yeah, the problem is that if the Fed raises interest rates just a little bit more, you probably collapse the jobs market. And if you don't raise them, that sticky inflation keeps sapping the economy. So it's hopeless, in my opinion. Elon Musk, by the way, the other day said, oh, we're already in a mild recession. Yeah, everyone knows it. I agree with him. It's not a deep recession yet, but it's going to get there. Jorge Gomes, lol, come visit the real source of biltong here in South Africa. I actually one time did have biltong from South Africa, real authentic biltong, because one of my exes knew a South African, and he managed to ship that along with some sort of candy that was like honey flavored, but it melted in the box, and so it was everywhere. The biltong was delicious, I will say. It was definitely one of the best meats I've had. The best meat I've had, though, is buffalo, from bison from the United States, specifically buffalo burgers. Oh, my fucking God. It really is good. Buffalo jerky as well. Or a roast, chop it up, put it in a stew. It doesn't really matter. It's infinitely superior to beef. I don't even understand why buffalo isn't more widely consumed. Hunter Wadley, isn't the administration going to introduce a CBDC in July? What better way to lull normies than a banking crisis? Safe and effective, round 2. Yes, look forward to the possibility that they try to do a central bank digital currency. I will not use it myself. Johansson Socks clanks from Corpus Christi, Texas. A lot of Texans watching. Hello there, says lamb is the best. I do like lamb. Yeah, lamb chops, extra rare, of course. No, I'm just joking. But yeah, lamb is good. Deer is good. Venison, buffalo, ostrich, gator is good. Boar is good. Elk is good. There aren't many bad meats, actually. Meat is good. There's vegans, they're missing out on life. Next news story. Florida GOP lawmakers ready move allowing DeSantis to run for president without resigning. With time running out in this year's annual session, Senate Republicans will add the provision to a sweeping elections bill. Of course, they've got the majority that they need to actually pass it. I would like to point this out. Isn't it a little bit odd that that they're changing this particular law, and DeSantis, of course, has to sign off on the change? He will effectively be signing himself the power to run for the presidency while being a governor. So the people of Florida have to deal with a situation in which the person who represents their state, instead of standing aside and letting it be managed by someone else who has also been elected, will also be campaigning for the presidency. Now, this is something that some political figures don't have a problem with. And in some states, you do have to resign from current positions, some positions, not always all of them, in order to run for other offices. In some states, they don't have a problem with it. For example, Justice, who we'll talk about, he's the current sitting governor of West Virginia. He's thrown his hat in the race to run for the Senate seat there against Joe Manchin. We'll be talking about that. It's an interesting story. Isn't it a little bit odd, though, to be the person that has to sign yourself that power and then abandon your constituents? The problem for DeSantis is this. If he's successful, it's all good. You know, he wins the nomination. He goes on, maybe wins or loses against Biden, presumptively. That's okay. If he doesn't, and I don't think that he will, I do believe that Trump is virtually inevitable as the GOP nominee. He's just fucked his career. He's completely destroyed his career, and in the process, he's changed election law with regards to Florida state politics, probably forever. And you could end up seeing a situation where Florida goes back towards being blue, and the Democrats capitalize on this as an element of corruption and retake the state. And then they'll maintain that law, though. They won't put that genie back into the bottle. So yeah, I've got problems with DeSantis at this point. And you all know, I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. I was on board Team Trump since the day that he announced anyway. And in the lead up to that, it said I would like him to run again anyway. But I never had a problem with DeSantis, but he keeps making dumb mistakes. It would be better to resign and run for the presidency. That would, by the way, that would show, hey, I'm really in it to win it. I believe I can win. Doing this is half-assing it, just like saying that in this month, in a few weeks possibly, he's going to announce an exploratory committee. People don't want you to have an exploratory committee. It should have already been convened very silently behind the scenes. Look at the fucking polls. Look at the fucking demographics. Look at the fucking platforms of the other candidates in your party for the primaries and the potential general election opponents, which is basically Biden. RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson won't make the cut. Look at that. Do it informally. Have some, staff and some trusted allies helping you do that, and then make your determination. Don't half walk it by forming an exploratory committee while also saying, well, I'm still going to be governor. Don't worry, Floridians, but I'm also going to be running for the presidency. It makes it look like you expect not to win. And that's not exactly what a plurality of GOP voters want right now. They don't want somebody half-assing it. That's the problem. DeSantis, with this step, if it goes forth, has once again harmed his own potential presidential ambitions. And it's sad because if he had chosen a different path, he would be viable for 28. I think at this point, if this goes through, I think he's made one too many mistakes. I don't think he can win. I think there will be instead of a 95% chance that Trump is the nominee, unless he dies or something, it'll be a 99% chance in my estimation at that time. What happens in the general at this point is anyone's guess, but it'll be an almost inevitable rematch between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, which at the very least will be very entertaining. Imagine that debate with Joe Biden puttering around on stage, half aware of his own existence. Donald Trump can just sit there and shrug and roll his eyes at him at some point. Hunter Wadley, beef tongue is amazing, incredibly tender. There's actually a pressed meat here for like on sandwiches that has beef tongue in it. I like it. Liz considers it terrible. She won't even get near me when I'm eating it. Also, they sell actual pig's heads at the market locally. I want to get one and do the glaze and salting and shit and cook a pig's head. And then I'm going to take pictures of it. That'd be funny. Mojo Hansen, the GOP are in danger of overcorrecting again. I agree. Yeah, they're doing everything that they fucking can to lose. Well, again, that ties into the Jim Justice story from West Virginia. Josh and Jesus, DeSantis anti-free speech bill is scary. Yeah, I warned of that months ago and said that if he signed it in that current form, which he did, I could no longer reasonably support him in 24. I hold to that. Again, there are things that he's done that are good. He's a viable, reasonable individual. I don't understand how a person like that can make so many errors in such a short time. I don't actually understand it. And then you look at the endorsements list. Half of the Florida legislature GOP has already endorsed Donald Trump. DeSantis has slim pickings as far as even in-state allies go. I'm almost confident that he's not going to announce that he's going to run. If the endorsements continue to mount up, at some point, he'd be crazy not to call it quits. He should stand down. Whether he endorses Trump or not is immaterial. He can just go silent and say, no, I'm not running. Bye. I'm the governor of Florida. I've got a job. Fuck off. Leave me alone. Dark Gary 92. Wrong. DeSantis has completely lost all my support. He's not willing to make a swift executive decision on running for the nomination. How can I trust him to make swift executive decisions for the United States? The point stands, actually. Absolutely. You need an exploratory committee. Your big announcement that you teased out a month ago is that you're forming an exploratory committee, thus going into Tim Scott land. Nikki Haley didn't need to do that. Ramaswamy didn't need to do that. Other also-rans don't need to do that. Why do you need to? You're the only other viable contender that's in the double-digit range. Kyle Miller, I agree with you, Sticks. The GOP has been poisoning themselves just to get rid of MAGA like they did to the Tea Party. I hope MAGA wins. That'll require a lot of work, but it is doable. By the way, the cat appears to be trying to get into her feed bag over there for some reason. You've got food in the bowl, Yana, just to be clear. It's literally a foot away from you. Cold Summer 91, do you think we are headed into a depression at this point? I'm not willing to predict that, but we are headed into a deeper recession. Ozzy's Robots, the Bushes are turning him into low-energy DeSantis. That's like a Jeb moment. Tokar, Sticks, have you spent time with the intellectually disabled? Yes, actually. The people with extra chromosomes are good company if you haven't. Happiest and fun people. Yeah, I did unified bowling back in high school, actually. You volunteer, you've got students with special needs of various kinds, autism, Down syndrome, etc., and you go bowling. And it was pretty fun, actually. I've literally got a bronze award from the Special Olympics back in Rutland. Like literally. It reminds me of a grindcore song that a few of you may be familiar with, but I did manage to win bronze in the Special Olympics. It's fun. Ashley, errors or maybe controlled mistakes? True. Sparky, fresh meat has all needed vitamins and minerals. After a couple days, some goes away, so in the absence of a fresh kill, eat supplemental vegetables. You should eat veggies anyway. They're tasty too. Asparagus, fucking artichokes, Brussels sprouts, carrots, potatoes, beets, string beans, basically all of them. In fact, I don't know if there's any vegetable I don't like. About the only food that I've really disliked is persimmons. I don't understand those. Muddy Drip 6665. Meat is great. Been on the lion diet for a month and lost 16 pounds. Completely level energy levels. No more naps during the day. No more relying on energy drinks and coffee for energy. Feeling fantastic. Oh, you should still drink coffee, though. How can you clank along otherwise? I guess you can liquefy the meat in a blender and clank a spoon in that. Add a little bit of ketchup. Just trust me on that one. It'll be like a meat smoothie. Probably taste better than it would feel in your mouth. Next news story. This is an important one. It's on. Joe Manchin closer than ever to losing his Senate seat. Now, here's the problem. Manchin is sold out. He sold out on guns. He sold out on the infrastructure deal, where he went behind his own voters' back for several months and held private meetings with Biden et al., while publicly professing that he couldn't support the bill. He parsed out a tiny amount of the bill, like 2% of the spending, called it a day, and then voted for it, thus backstabbing his fans. He is a Democrat who is in a deep red state, one of the most deep red states, and he just abandoned his constituents on both economics and guns. It's not looking good for Joe Manchin. Now, up until now, a man named Mooney has been running. He happens to be Andy Mooney. He happens to be a representative in the state. He's a member of the Freedom Caucus. He's relatively popular. He's backed by Trump, and he's been endorsed by Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, etc. So it looked like it would be a Mooney v. Manchin matchup. Easy pickup, probably, because Manchin is running against the wind anyway in a state where the vast plurality of voters, 2/3 of them, in fact, are already Republican partisans. So if he loses the Republicans that literally have to vote for him crossing the aisle in order to get elected in the first place, Manchin is at a disadvantage regardless of incumbency. Manchin has polling issues. He has fallen by double digits in approval. He hasn't even announced yet, and his fundraising is a goddamn joke for a person who's a formerly relatively popular incumbent. His fundraising is a fucking joke right now. He's easy to defeat potentially. So what has the uniparty GOP done now in order to prevent Mooney, who again is MAGA, who is a friend of Trump, et cetera, he walks the walk, doesn't just talk the talk like Jim Justice. To stop him, what happens? Jim Justice is told to get into the race. He's a he's a self-made multi-millionaire, former billionaire actually, and the sitting governor of the state of West Virginia. While he is also on friendly terms with Trump, he is not a member of the Freedom Caucus, and he's endorsed by Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham. I smell a big goddamn rat that smells a lot like 2020's election now, doesn't it? Let's put 2 and fucking 2 together. Mitch McConnell doesn't want a single populist in the Republican Party standing in Congress. He doesn't want a single populist anywhere because he's a uniparty neocon fucking corporate stooge. They're doing this to use Jim Justice's massive fortune and the apparatus of the GOP at the RNC's level to try to stop Mooney. They don't give a shit about Manchin. Manchin's a useful idiot. He'll dance like a puppet if you bribe him enough. But Mooney actually walks the walk. This is all about preventing MAGA from having another Senate seat. That's the long and short of it. I hate to tell you, but they'll probably be successful too. Therefore, if you are in West Virginia, do not support Jim Justice. Support Mooney. And do all you can to try to get him into that situation. I mean, if he doesn't win the primaries, it'll automatically be either the neoliberal Joe Manchin, who is occasionally useful. You know, he doesn't want to end the filibuster. Okay, that's to his credit. But to his discredit, Feinstein agrees with you, asshole. Or it'll be Jim Justice, who will be basically a Cornine, basically a Mitt Romney. Okay, he's a Republican. Yay. So he doesn't want to raise taxes further than they've already been raised by successive liberals. He doesn't want to violate gun rights much more than they're already being violated, but he's not going to stand for anything. He's already the governor. So that particular election is definitely one to watch. If you are in West Virginia, definitely do what you can to popularize Mooney. Put up stickers, talk to people, knock on doors, do whatever the fuck you can. Because otherwise, and keep in mind, of course, if he does get nominated, because Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham don't like him, they'll probably try to do what they did to Cawthorn and others and just not fund him. They screwed Blake Masters. They screwed Laxalt, unsuccessfully in that case. They screwed Mastriano, somewhat deservingly. Mehmet Oz for what little it's worth. Herschel Walker for what much more it's worth. Et cetera, on down the line. The MAGA candidates in the last election were screwed by the RNC. The RNC then unsuccessfully attempted to insinuate that it was Trump's fault. Doesn't seem to have worked based on the primary polling. Mitch McConnell. Tokar, you're officially unquestionably rad in my book now. Excellent. I like the compliment. Rad and tubular, man. Sparky, better to have Buford T. Justice than Jim Justice. Troublesome Boner, why is every black majority, can I say that on YouTube? Is there a legitimate non-racist reason that doesn't just blame white people or race in general for why most African countries are deep third world? Colonialism does play a role. There was exploitation, although there was also infrastructure building, a lot of infighting, tribal warfare, etc. You got to realize that a lot of African nations were carved up artificially, and multiple tribal groups that traditionally fucking hated each other were compacted into the same nation and then told by the British and French effectively, hey, you have to get along and form a representative government. It didn't work too well, now did it? Anytime you see straight lines, you tend to look at something that's more modernly diplomatic than in the ancient times. Look at the borders of countries if you want an example. Iraq has the same problem, some of the others. The Defamation League, help from our fellow clankers is needed. We would be more detailed, but our super chat keeps getting denied. See our most recent post on Zuckerberg's platform for details. Okay, you can look at the Defamation League's latest Facebook post if you want to help them out with an unknown problem. Alden the Blue, seems rhinos have taken over DeSantis' career. Like you said, it's an overcorrection that will blow up in their faces. This time, the Florida citizens will get to enjoy the consequences. Yay! I'm sure they're happy about that. Keith Fancher, good morning from Deer Park, Texas. Good morning to you. Next news story. Keith Woods posting here about Ireland. There's a bill that's being proposed in Ireland that I'm assuming will pass or may have already passed in the last couple of days, actually. Offense of preparing or possessing material likely to incite violence or hatred against persons or on account of their protected characteristics. So, I mean, if you have a poster that says "Die Whitey," that will be okay in Ireland. Probably not for any other particular sub-ethnic group. And the section is prepares or possesses material that is likely to incite violence or hatred against a person or group of persons on account of their protected characteristics or any of those characteristics. Now, on paper, it's okay. You know, you can't put up flyers that say kill black people. Well, that makes sense. You know, you're literally attempting to incite violence against others. That goes beyond speech. You're attempting to cause something that has nothing to do with speech. You're attempting to cause an action, a violent one, an illegal one. Okay, that makes sense. See, here's the problem. And it's the same fucking problem in all Western nations. When they package something up like this with this kind of language, it is always misused. Pepe the Frog, it's okay to be white, or a goddamn okay hand sign sitting there on a billet, much like with the House bill down in Florida, of course, 269, signed by DeSantis the other day, will be differentially enforced. And because the language is vacuous enough to be up for interpretation, it will be up for interpretation. So the most easily offended members of society, assuming that they have the right skin color or genitals, will be able to proclaim in the nation of Ireland, hey, you know, this meme on this person's computer, and I do mean literally this would impact digital content, that they're not posting. They've literally just got it on their computer, but I happen to know that they have it. Well, then you can go to jail now. Ireland has decided to become sub-third world with regards to its respect for the ability of its own people to express themselves. Not surprised, though. I think we should give Ireland back to the English because even in Britbongistan with their knife bins and their license for owning licenses, somehow the Irish just had to one-up them. The Irish decided, oh, we're inferior to England in every socioeconomic measure. We're inferior diplomatically, militarily, etc. We don't have nearly as much clout in any way. I know what we'll do. We're going to compete. We'll finally win. We're going to be better at it than the English to grind down their own citizens' rights and to depart from the Western civilization entirely. I guess that's the whole point. It doesn't seem to have any other point. There's not a whole lot of hateful violence in Ireland now, is there? Other than, the IRA and shit like that from some fucking terrorists. Other than that, Ireland is not generally known to be a particularly violent country. I feel right at home in Ireland. I'd love to see it. I'll go fucking kiss the Blarney Stone and have an ale and all that shit. Sounds good. By the way, Irish food underrated. Some people say, oh, it's just slop that's boiled for 6 hours. It's fucking delicious. Eat an Irish stew sometime. The Defamation League. Follow-up. It's not a problem. It's a gig and trolling opportunity. Okay, well, if you want to do some trolling... Hunter Wadley, I can't quote any Cancer Slug lyrics in Superchat. Sad. Great recommend. Yeah, Cancer Slug is pretty great. The Grizzly, as usual. By the way, sending $50. Thank you very much. YouTube deliberately did not notify me of your stream. Do you think that Trump should just start spending his own money on MAGA candidates, making MAGA functionally a separate party within the Republicans, or would that tactic not work? It's too much money. You got to realize Donald Trump is a multi-billionaire, but most of that money is tied up in property. He is a property billionaire. Unless he wants to sell a property that is making money day after day, he doesn't have that money on hand. He would have to take out credit. He'd have to take out a loan. He'd have to say, look, I got all this property and I want to spend money. But the problem is you can't really do that to influence political campaigns. Trump can't go to the bank and say, I need $200 million. They say, what's it for? Is it a casino this time, Mr. Trump, or a golf course, or a bunch of condominiums? No. I want to donate to a gubernatorial candidate in West Virginia. Then I'm going to loan him the money. They wouldn't allow it. So he'd have to liquidate his own properties. But the thing is, his kids and other executives largely run that show now. He's simply the politician. He would effectively be bereaving his kids of something that makes them money too for potentially their whole lifetimes, their kids' lifetimes, etc. Aaron Bennett. Have you heard about BRICS potentially getting more nations under its belt, potentially multiple Middle East nations? Collapse of dollar? No, it's not going to collapse the dollar because the dollar is backed by aircraft carriers. What it will do is it will destabilize BRICS, though. I've been warning of that for years based on some of the internal friction. Control over order balance sent 2 euros. Thank you. No comment. Sparky, use BRICS to build a better world. Yeah, they can't even build up their own countries, though. They've got that problem. Patriot Chiro, I live in Florida. I'm on Team Trump. However, I watched DeSantis during the entire COVID nonsense. He is more MAGA than you think. I believe his uniparty appearing tendencies are strategic. I don't believe that. Not with HB 269. And certainly not with the decision, the wonky decision to form an exploratory committee when you are literally in second place within the primaries without actually having announced. That looks indecisive. It looks weak. Not a banned account. Chances Kamala takes the helm. Time for a woman. Near 100% if Biden wins re-election. Yes, the liberals will have doomed the United States to have a first female president who was not elected at all, who was selected for that position based on having been VP. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, how lovely. That'll do great things for the cause of women's equality, by the way. Next news story. Doctors watching for more cases after mysterious cluster of brain infections strikes kids in southern Nevada. Yes, and for some reason they're dovetailing this with COVID lockdowns. Since the idea is people can't get screening and medicine suffers in general and you can't go to the hospital. And it's kind of weird. I'll read through a little bit of this. Disease detectives on the case. Brain abscesses are pus-filled pockets of infection that spread to the brain. They can cause seizures, visual disturbances, or changes in vision, speech coordination, or balance. The earliest symptoms are headaches and a fever that comes and goes. Abscesses often require several surgeries to treat, and kids may spend weeks or even months in the hospital recovering after they have one. In the Clark County cluster, roughly 3/4 of the cases were in boys, and most were around age 12. So you're looking at probably interpersonal contact spreading some sort of contagion. That would be the normal explanation. They're not 100% sure exactly what is happening here. So yes, there is unfortunately some sort of disease in southern Nevada that is causing abscesses in kids' brains. And they're not 100% sure exactly what's going on. So could be all these kids were at the same place at some point that was contaminated by some bacterium. Could be their interactions between one another. One person gets a rare infection, spreads it to others. And the idea is that that lockdowns have hampered the ability to get medical intervention, and so may have caused some other pathogen to rise up. The other idea is that people have immunity problems right now because they've been focusing on one disease and its vectors so much, they've neglected the others. So yeah, more potential dead or crippled kids, thanks to certain authoritarians in society and their various stupid rules. It wouldn't even be a surprise to me, by the way. Let's see. Sparky, hypersonic missiles make aircraft carriers obsolete. No, they don't. Not even close. China's targeting systems aren't necessarily 100% anyway. That'd be interesting. Keyblade Knight, I've been doing some self-improvement lately. I've given up fast food and soda completely as my vice, taking walks after work, practicing firearms with my father, and became a machine operator at my job. Is there anything else I can improve on? Do all the things that you're doing now even better. That's good. It's good to hear your self-improvement. And also, you can always branch out into literally anything else you want. Any interest, any skill that you have. And try new things because you may not know what skills you have. Of course, you may be very shy about, like, for instance, singing around other people. But then all of a sudden it turns out you have a real set of pipes on you and the music teacher says, shit, you're hitting every octave. You're a savant. You don't know. Maybe you know how to cook really a lot better than you think. Maybe you're good at carpentry. Hell, who knows? Life is a nonstop practice of trying to self-improve. Otherwise, you end up sliding backwards. This is called aging. Not a bad account. How fortified is the federal election for 2024? That remains to be seen, but we are seeing a warning sign of it in West Virginia. Sparky disagreeing with me and saying, yes, they do. Again, missiles can be intercepted. We're building more sophisticated interception systems at this time. Also, railguns and laser weapons and cool shit like that. China has laser weapons now as well. Cam FNA on Rumble. I heard that once the word of child COVID-sniffing dogs reached the White House, Biden signed up to train alongside the dogs. Yeah, see, what we should do is just send standard drug-sniffing dogs into Congress one day, impromptu, and see how many people come back positive for cocaine. Probably half of the representatives and more than half the senators, I would imagine. And then the next news story, and the final one, Hispanics are turning Republican, that's objectively true. They've been steadily marching towards the GOP now for several cycles. Trump a big part of that. And they'll vote for Ron DeSantis in 2024. This is an opinion piece, of course, for the Sun Sentinel. Here's what I would question, and I'm just putting this out there more open-ended. I can't tell you whether Hispanic voters are going to lean more towards Trump or DeSantis. That is an unknown quantity. Of course, the GOP still has a minority within the Hispanic vote, but it is a large enough share, and it's definitely growing. It's hard to tell because DeSantis does have significant in-state popularity. Of course, that's Florida voters. It's not national voters. Significant in-state popularity. He's younger and sort of jives more with economically speaking, with sort of some of those issues. But Trump had high approval among Hispanic voters, including not just Republicans, but also independents, partially because of his various finesse. And the thing is, Hispanics have pulled free now, largely of the id poll of yesteryear's Democrats, where they're like, basically, hey, you're not white, therefore you're underrepresented and terrible and poorly off, and so fucking vote for us, we'll give you welfare. But more and more Hispanics have pulled themselves out of that initial poverty. Many are now third generation for the first time, and even more than that. And they don't even necessarily have significant connections to their so-called home country because their home country is the United States. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these blocks of people end up reduced in their capability of speaking, for instance, Spanish at some point. They're going more GOP, and part of that is Trump and economic populism. The problem is that DeSantis' economic message is basically just a knockoff of Trump's economic message. So on that, they're even Stevens. Then you have to look at, well, one guy has been president, the other hasn't. One guy is much older. Trump is much older than DeSantis. Age would play a role potentially. And I would think that all things considered, it'll be similar to any other voting bloc. I think that most Hispanic GOP voters will vote for Donald Trump simply because most Republican voters will vote for Donald Trump. I think he'll win by 25 points or so in the primaries. This is assuming that DeSantis gets in. That's the other part. That's the other problem. You've got a situation where all of the polls are skewed anyway, simply because DeSantis and other people like Pence, who haven't announced it all, are still in the polls. We have the same problem with Biden. For some reason, despite the fact that she has sworn off the possibility of running and explicitly endorsed Biden, Elizabeth Warren is still in the polls. Bernie Sanders is still counted in the polls. He has endorsed Biden and declared he's not going to run. So we don't even have an accurate measurement of the polls right now. In fact, DeSantis, and it would be wise, should probably wait on his exploratory committee or whatever until the polls parse down and take care of the people who have announced they're not running. Unfortunately, the rest of the potential GOP field is much more reluctant than the Democrats to close rank and swear it off. Sanders, Warren, etc. have endorsed Biden, or have at least declared they're not running. On the other side, Pence hasn't said jack shit. Neither, by the way, has Ron DeSantis. By the way, please send no more super chats because I have to go off fairly soon here and do other things. I'm making cottage pie tonight. Delicious. Sigil Stone 17. It's nice the legal Hispanics are shaking off the id poll, but it's the illegal ones voting that's the problem, and you missed a couple super chats. My apologies. I'll try to get to them. However, people who are legally in the United States cannot legally vote. Oh, yeah, you said DeSantis is taking some bad advice from someone. With the pamphlet law and now this, he's merely signing his career into the grave. I think Disney is using agents to perform a controlled demolition. And then a bar opened in my town recently that serves 50-50 buffalo beef burgers on Thursdays. Their shtick is everything is locally sourced, so apparently buffalo are ranched in Pennsylvania. There are some buffalo as well, ranched in Vermont, or at least there were years ago. I don't know if the buffalo farm's still there. Trevor Carson, Clanks from Indiana. This is the first stream I've caught live, and I've been watching since the MRE days. By the way, Steve, MRA Info, has made a couple of new videos in the last 24 hours. He is officially not dead from botulism. Good update. Shaker Silver. People underestimate the Latino bloc for Trump with his work to end border trafficking and the Obama-era discrimination versus Cubans and Venezuelan migrants. Exactly. Trump does have an ingrained advantage. In the end, I think that the proportion will be related to the proportion of overall GOP voters. So neither particularly higher or lower than that. So it'd be, 55, 60%. And that depends on what happens with DeSantis even getting in. The Patriot Chiro. Trump appeased the Uniparty by picking that dork rhino. Pence have to play the political game better than them. Then punish them. Still Team Trump. Yes, I opposed Pence being the running mate. People will remember. That was a bad decision, as we've seen multiple times. Sparky, U.S. has been deindustrialized, and its military is a shell of its former self. 21st century is the century of clankdom. Yeah, if I were the dictator of the world, things would be better, but then I'd have to work on a schedule, so no thanks. I'd rather watch paint dry. Dark Gary 92, I'm Hispanic in California. My condolences. Plenty of my fellow Hispanics keep asking me if Trump is still running and if he's going to come back. They miss the Trump economy and don't care for his attitude. They want his economy back. I figured that's probably a common theme. Yeah. Mean tweets? I made more money and paid less taxes. Who gives a fucking shit? This is, by the way, not just a Hispanic issue. It's an issue for literally everyone. Why would you want to punch yourself in the head for no reason? Electing Biden basically is basically the same as doing that, kicking yourself in the fucking nads. I decided to fuck myself in the ass because CNN told me that Orange Man. That's basically the average Biden voter. Anyway, I'm going to go offline, I think, here. I thank you to all of the 5,000 people currently tuned in live, roughly. And for all of your generous donations, of course. It keeps the lights on and milk in the baby's bottle and everything else. And a little bit of tonic over here for me. Everyone has their vices. Everyone has something they have to be spendthrift on. For me, it's elderflower tonic and lots of limes because I don't want to get fucking scurvy. I'll be back tomorrow, of course, with another news stream. And, well, actually, no, I'm not 100% sure that I will live stream tomorrow. We've got a guest coming over, and in the morning I do a driving thing. Like, you know, not an exam or a test, but training to, like, pass the driver's test. So I don't know. I'll probably be pretty de-energized. So maybe I'll stream tomorrow. It might be later. We'll fucking figure it out at the time. If not, I'll do a couple of shorts or something. That's about all. Peace out.